Okay, welcome to our first reading of From the Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler, one of the longest titles I've ever read. I'm looking forward to reading this with you. So when you open up to the title page, we get a little sketch. This book's got some various sketches in here. See one of the characters going through some kind of a filing cabinet. Okay. Now, before Chapter 1, there is a letter from Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler. And we're going to read that. So here she is writing the letter. And it says, "To my lawyer, Saxonburg. I can't say that I enjoyed your last visit. It was obvious that you had too much on your mind to pay any attention to what I was trying to say. Perhaps if you had some interest in this world besides law, taxes, and your grandchildren, you could almost be a fascinating person. Almost. That last visit was the worst bore. I won't risk another dull visit for a while, so I'm having Sheldon, my chauffeur, deliver this account to your home. I've written it to explain certain changes I want made in my last will and testament. You'll understand those changes, and a lot of other things, much better after reading it. I'm sending you a carbon copy. I'll keep the original in my files. I don't come in until much later, but never mind. You'll find enough to interest you until I do. You never knew that I could write this well, did you? Of course, you don't actually know yet, but you soon will. I've spent a lot of time on this file. I listened, I investigated, and I fitted all the pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle. It leaves no doubts. Well, Saxonburg, read and discover. Mrs. Basil E. Frankweiler." Here she is again. Okay, so a little bit of mystery right before the story even begins. Chapter 1. Claudia knew that she could never pull off the old-fashioned kind of running away. That is, running away in the heat of anger with a knapsack on her back. She didn't like discomfort. Even picnics were untidy and inconvenient. All those insects and the sun melting and icing on the cupcakes. Therefore, she decided that her leaving home would not be just running from somewhere, but it would be running to somewhere. To a large place, a comfortable place, an indoor place, and preferably a beautiful place. And that's why she decided upon the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City. She planned very carefully. She saved her allowance, and she chose her companion. She chose Jamie, the second youngest of her 3 younger brothers. He could be counted on to be quiet, and now and then he was good for a laugh. Besides, he was rich. Unlike most boys his age, he had never even begun collecting baseball cards. He saved almost every penny he got. But Claudia waited to tell Jamie that she had decided upon him. She couldn't count on him to be that quiet for that long. And she calculated needing that long to save her weekly allowances. It seemed senseless to run away without money. Living in the suburbs had taught her that everything costs. She had to save enough for train fare and a few expenses before she could tell Jamie or make final plans. In the meantime, she almost forgot why she was running away. But not entirely. Claudia knew that it had to do with injustice. She was the oldest child and the only girl and was subject to a lot of injustice. Perhaps it was because she had to both empty the dishwasher and set the table on the same night while her brothers got out of everything. And perhaps there was another reason more clear to me than to Claudia. A reason that had to do with the sameness of each and every week. She was bored with simply being straight A's Claudia Kincaid. She was tired of arguing about whose turn it was to choose the Sunday night 7:30 television show, of injustice, and of the monotony of everything. The fact that her allowance was so small that it took her more than 3 weeks of skipping hot fudge sundaes to save enough for train fare was another example of injustice. Since you always drive to the city, Saxonburg, you probably don't know the cost of train fare. I'll tell you. Full fare one way costs $1.60. Claudia and Jamie could each travel for half of that since she was 1 month under 12, and Jamie was well under 12, being only 9. Since she intended to return home after everyone had learned a lesson in Claudia appreciation, she had to save money for her return trip, too, which was like full fare one way. Claudia knew that hundreds of people who lived in her town worked in offices in New York City and could afford to pay full fare both ways every day, like her father. After all, Greenwich was considered an actual suburb of New York, a commuting suburb. Even though Claudia knew that New York City was not far away, certainly not far enough to go considering the size and number of injustices done to her, she knew that it was a good place to get lost. Her mother's Mahjong Club ladies called it the city. Most of them never ventured there. It was exhausting, and it made them nervous. When she was in the 4th grade, her class had gone on a trip to visit historical places in Manhattan. Jonathan Richter's mother hadn't let him go for fear he'd get separated from the group and all the jostling that goes on in New York. Mrs. Richter, who was something of a character, had said that she was certain that he would come home lost, and she considered the air very bad for him to breathe. Claudia loved the city because it was elegant, it was important, and busy. The best place in the world to hide. She studied maps and the tour guide book of the American Automobile Association and reviewed every field trip her class had ever taken. She made a specialized geography course for herself. There were even some pamphlets about the museum around the house, which she quietly researched. Claudia also decided that she must get accustomed to giving up things. Learning to do without hot fudge sundaes was good practice for her. She made do with the good humor bars her mother always kept in their freezer. Normally, Claudia's hot fudge expenses were 40 cents per week. You can tell this book was written a while ago. Hot fudge sundaes are definitely more than 40 cents. Before her decision to run away, deciding what to do with the 10 cents left over from her allowance had been the biggest adventure she had had each week. Sometimes she didn't even have 10 cents, for she lost a nickel every time she broke one of the household rules, like forgetting to make her bed in the morning. She was certain that her allowance was the smallest in her class, and most of the other 6th graders never lost part of their pay since they had full-time maids to do the chores instead of a cleaning lady only twice a week. Once after she had started saving, the drugstore had a special, hot fudge 27 cents, the sign in the window said. She bought one. It would postpone her running away only 27 cents worth. Besides, once she made up her mind to go, she enjoyed the planning almost as much as she enjoyed spending money. Planning long and well was one of her special talents. Jamie, the chosen brother, didn't even care for hot fudge sundaes, although he could have bought one at least every other week. A year and a half before, Jamie had made a big purchase. He had spent his birthday money and part of his Christmas money on a transistor radio made in Japan, purchased from Woolworths. Occasionally he bought a battery for it. They would probably need the radio. That made another good reason for choosing Jamie. You see how she's very calculating? She's not just impulsively running away. She's planning how she's going to do it. She's taking time. She's saving money. She's strategically picking her younger brother Jamie because he's a saver. He's going to have money. On Saturdays, Claudia emptied the wastebaskets, a task she despised. There were so many of them. Everyone in her family had his own bedroom and wastebasket, except her mother and father, who shared both with each other. Almost every Saturday, Steve emptied his pencil sharpener into his. She knew he made his basket messy on purpose. One Saturday, as she was carrying the basket from her parents' room, she jiggled it a little so that the contents would sift down and not spill out as she walked. Their basket was always so full since there were 2 of them using it. She managed to shift a shallow layer of Kleenex, which her mother had used for blotting lipstick, and thus exposed the corner of a red ticket. Using the tips of her forefinger and thumb like a pair of forceps, she pulled at it and discovered a 10-ride pass for the New York, New Haven, and Hartford Railroad. Used train passes normally do not appear in suburban wastebaskets. They appear in the pockets of train conductors. 9 rides and a pass are marked off in little squares along the bottom edge, and they are punched one at a time as they are used. For the 10th ride, the conductor collects the pass. Their cleaning lady, who had come on Friday, must have thought that the pass was all used up, since rides 1 through 9 were already punched. The cleaning lady never went to New York, and Claudia's dad never kept close track of his pocket change or his train passes. So that means that there's 1 ride left, right? 1 free ride. Both she and Jamie could travel on the leftover pass, since 2 half fares equal 1 whole. Now they could board the train without having to purchase tickets. They would avoid the station master and any stupid questions he might ask. What a find! From a litter of lipstick kisses, Claudia had plucked a free ride. She regarded it as an invitation. They would leave on Wednesday. On Monday afternoon, Claudia told Jamie at the school bus stop that she wanted him to sit with her because she had something important to tell him. Usually, the four Kincaid children neither waited for each other nor walked together, except for Kevin, who was somebody's charge each week. School had begun on the Wednesday after Labor Day. Therefore, their fiscal week, as Claudia chose to call it, began always on Wednesday. Kevin was only 6 and in the first grade, and was made much over by everyone, especially by Mrs. Kincaid, Claudia thought. Claudia also thought that he was terribly babied and impossibly spoiled. You would think that her parents would know something about raising children by the time Kevin, their fourth, came along. But her parents hadn't learned. She couldn't remember being anyone's charge when she was in the first grade. Her mother had simply met her at the bus stop each day. I wonder if any of you feel like Claudia. Do you ever feel like things are unfair? Or that if you have a younger brother or sister, you feel like they don't ever have to do any chores and you get all the work? I bet some of you can identify with how Claudia is feeling right now. All of her injustices. Jamie wanted to sit with his buddy Bruce. They played cards on the bus. Each day meant a continuation of the day before. The game was nothing very complicated, Saxonburg, nothing terribly refined. They played War, that simple game where each player puts down a card and the higher card takes both. If the cards are the same, there is a war which involves putting down more cards. Winner then takes all the war cards. Every night when Bruce got off at his stop, he'd take his stack of cards home with him. Jamie would do the same. They always took a vow not to shuffle. At the stop before Bruce's house, they would stop playing, wrap a rubber band around each pile, hold the stack under each other's chin, and spit on each other's deck, saying, "Thou shalt not shuffle." Then each tapped his deck and put it in his pocket. Claudia found the whole procedure disgusting, so she suffered no feelings of guilt when she pulled Jamie away from his precious game. Jamie was mad, though. He was in no mood to listen to Claudia. He sat slumped in his seat with his lips pooched out and his eyebrows pulled down on top of his eyes. He looked like a miniature, clean-shaven Neanderthal man. Claudia didn't say anything. She waited for him to cool off. You see them there in the middle? See him pouting? Jamie spoke first. "Gosh, Claude, why don't you pick on Steve?" Claudia answered, "I thought, Jamie, that you'd see that it's obvious I don't want Steve." "Well," Jamie pleaded, want him. Claudia had planned her speech. "I want you, Jamie, for the greatest adventure of our lives." Jamie muttered, "Well, I wouldn't mind if you'd pick on someone else." Claudia looked out the window and didn't answer. Jamie said, "As long as you've got me here, tell me." Claudia still said nothing, and still looked out the window. Jamie became impatient. "I said that as long as you've got me here, you may as well tell me." Claudia remained silent. Jamie erupted. "What's the matter with you, Claude? First you bust up my card game, then you don't tell me? It's undecent." "Break up, not bust up. Indecent, not undecent," Claudia corrected. "Oh, baloney, you know what I mean. Now tell me," he demanded. "I've picked you to accompany me on the greatest adventure of our mutual lives," Claudia repeated. "You said that." He clenched his teeth. "Now tell me." "I've decided to run away from home, and I've chosen you to accompany me." "Why pick on me? Why not pick on Steve?" he asked. Claudia sighed. "I don't want Steve. Steve is one of the things in my life that I'm running away from. I want you." Despite himself, Jamie felt flattered. Flattery is as important a machine as the lever, isn't it, Saxonburg? Give it a proper place to rest, and it can move the world. It moved Jamie. He stopped thinking, "Why pick on me?" and started thinking, "I am chosen." He sat up in his seat, unzipped his jacket, put one foot up on the seat, placed his hands over his bent knee, and said out of the corner of his mouth, "Okay, Claude, when do we bust out of here? And how?" Claudia stifled the urge to correct his grammar again. "On Wednesday. Here's the plan. Listen carefully." Jamie squinted his eyes and said, "Make it complicated, Claude. I like complications." Claudia laughed. "It's got to be simple to work. We'll go on Wednesday because Wednesday is music lesson day. I'm taking my violin out of its case and am packing it full of clothes. You do the same with your trumpet case. Take as much clean underwear as possible and socks, and at least one other shirt with you. All in a trumpet case? I should have taken up the bass fiddle. You can use some of the room in my case. Also use your book bag. Take your transistor radio. We'll stop there for today.